We can agree segregation's evil. An insult to God, an insult to the teachings of Christ.
Segregation,
yeah,
by the government, I would say that that's wrong.
Right on.
But as a human being, I have a right to decide even who I want to live in my neighborhood. I live in a pretty nice neighborhood now, and when I see people coming looking for a place to live, I'm like looking out the window. I'm telling everybody, come and look. I'm very concerned about who's moving in my neighborhood.
I think we all are.
Oh,
sure.
okay.
But
and that's
what do you?
discrimination, right?
No, it's discrimination when you try to keep someone from moving into your neighborhood because of their nationality or sexual orientation or their race or religion.
How about if you know that they can be pretty violent, they're going to bring crime and they're going to bring...
How do you know that when you haven't met them yet?
But we know.
How do you know?
We know.
I don't think you know.
No, we know.
I don't think you know.
We might not want to say, but we know. Let me ask, are you a man?
I aspire to be.
Is that a yes or no?
I consider myself a man, and I aspire to be better.
And are you a beta male or an alpha male?
How do you define those things?
The first definition you gave is the alpha male. And the beta male is an emotional male who goes by what he think or feel rather than what is logical.
Well, then I'd say I'm the first, but I do respect men who are man enough to face and feel their emotions.
But real men don't have emotions.
We might have to agree to disagree on that. I think all men have emotions. Some men bury them. Some men feel them, face them.
Is it something that they need to overcome?
If they're bad emotions, sure. If you're consumed by rage, greed, jealousy, hate, those are emotions you have to overcome. If you're a man who's beset by love and joy, you're doing something right.
Are you married?
I am.
And how long have you been married?
About 13, 14 years.
Really?
Yes, sir.
That's good. You notice that Black Americans are more immoral today. Not all, but most. They are more immoral today than any other time in the history of America or mankind. Most black people were a noble people. I grew up in Alabama. I grew up under the Jim Crow laws, and I grew up on a plantation. And during those days of growing up, Black Americans got married. It was unheard of to have abortions. They respected themselves and others. Whites and blacks got along. They respected one another. They didn't party together all the time, but they respected one another. And then here come the so-called civil rights movement, blaming white folks, causing blacks to turn away from family, starting to hate the white people.
I have to break this down one point by one point because respectfully,
And then they started imposing themselves on white people by going into their neighborhoods, their cafes and things like that, and you can't make anyone love you. And from then until this day, blacks have only gotten worse rather than getting better.
I don't know where to begin breaking that down. I think we're going to disagree on this point because I don't think they blamed whites, they blamed the institution of segregation, which I think is an insult to God, an insult to Jesus, and an insult to the idea of America. There was never any hatred of whites in the speeches of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King.
Right.
Many Caucasians helped in that battle because they recognized the evil of segregation. And I don't really view going as a tax-paying American citizen, going into a white community to patronize a business as being imposing your anything on somebody.
And why not? You don't have a right to impose yourself on someone else.
But you have a right to go into a business and pay money for goods and services.
Only if the government, if our tax dollars are paying for it. But if you got up and you built your business in a white community or wherever, you have a right to allow whomever you want in there, and I don't have a right to be upset about that because it might not be good for your business because you're losing money, but you have the right to do that because that's your own private business, and no one has a right to impose otherwise.
You have a right to try to do that. You'll be challenged because we can use the legislative branch for redress of grievances, and tax-paying citizens who paid for the roads and the electrical grid that allow you to have that business have a right to partake in it as well. If you wish to discriminate against a class of Americans for whatever your hang-up is, you have a right to try to do that, and the citizens have a right to use the judicial branch to push back, and that is what makes America great.
Well, they can drive down the road past my business, but if I say don't come in, they have no right to stop their car and come into my establishment. And that's what
But why would you want to keep black people from coming into an establishment?
I mean,
Why would a Caucasian want to do that?
I wouldn't want to do it because of my business, but I'm saying if I wanted that, I have a right to do that. And
I'm not sure if it was a private club. If you have a private club, you can.
Right.
But not a public business when the citizens pay for that electrical grid and pay for the roads that lead to your business.
I mean, they can go down the road, but if I want to do that, I can. And that's one of the ways the civil rights movement went wrong. And when they tried to force white people to love them.
I don't think they did that. Martin Luther King never tried to force white people to love them.
Have you ever tried to make a woman love you?
Yes, I have.
And did she love you?
No.
It doesn't work.
Right, but that wasn't Dr. King's aim. Dr. King was trying to have the end of segregation, and then his mission expanded to opposing the war in Vietnam and fighting for the rights of organized labor in this country.
He should have done is just make sure that the laws that protected white America protect blacks, and then left it alone.
We can agree that segregation's evil.
And nice people, people would come together naturally.
We can agree segregation's evil. An insult to God, an insult to the teachings of Christ.
Segregation.
Yeah.
By the government, I would say that that's wrong.
Right on.
But as a human being, I have a right to decide even who I want to live in my neighborhood.
I'm not sure about that.
When I live in a pretty nice neighborhood now, and when I see people coming looking for a place to live, I'm like looking out the window. I'm telling everybody, come and look. I'm very concerned about who's moving in my neighborhood.
I think we all are.
Oh,
sure.
okay.
But
and that's discrimination, right?
No, it's discrimination when you try to keep someone from moving into your neighborhood because of their nationality or sexual orientation or their race or religion.
How about if you know that they can be pretty violent, they're going to bring crime and they're going to bring...
How do you know that when you haven't met them yet?
But we know.
How do you know?
We know.
I don't think you know.
No, we know.
I don't think you know.
We might not want to say, but we know.
There's lots of Caucasians would look at you and think the same thing, and they'd be wrong.
And they have a right to think that.
They have a right to think it,
and
but they don't have a right to make America that kind of playing field.
And why do they have the
equality.
right to think it?
Because we have freedom of expression and freedom of thought.
That's right. And because of the way blacks have acted over the last 60 years ago or so, white would be quite concerned about them moving into the neighborhood.
The hardest working people I know are black folks, so I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Which one you know? I don't know. I haven't met them.
You haven't met them?
No.
If every black woman in this country went on strike for a week, our economy would come to a standstill.
Not true.
Yes, sir.
No, I think if every black woman went on a strike, most people would be happy. You know why? They won't have to hear this. They don't have to hear them complain about racism. They don't have to wait for them to get there, not on time. And then when you say, hey, I'm about to write you up, they cry racism. I think most people would be happy.
I'd love to introduce you to some really wonderful black women sometime.
There are some good ones out there.
There's millions of good ones out there, sir.
Really?
Millions of good white folks, Latinos, there's good people everywhere.
I said there are some good ones.
And the demons are not in groups, it's the demons within ourselves. It's the personal failings we have to struggle with, and we are called upon, if we take Jesus' teaching seriously, to not hate these people, but to love them and help them uplift. And I think that's what you do.
Right, but don't accept their wrongdoing. You have to correct them. If you truly love them, you will have to correct them.
Right, but I think keeping someone from moving into a neighborhood isn't correcting it. It's discriminating against them, and it's making them hate you back.
It's okay.
It's not okay in America. It's okay in some countries, but America has kind of worked that out in the legislative process. You can't. I mean, you really can't.
I got to ask you this. I got to ask. Do you think black Americans are suffering due to the due to racism, or the destruction of the family and the lack of moral character?
Well, I think what you call the destruction of the family is a symptom of a greater problem. I think it's a symptom, not the problem itself.
What's the problem?
Well, I think we're still living with the after effects of slavery and Jim Crow, and we still have an economic racism. When I say racism, I'm not talking about bigotry. I'm not talking racial hate. I'm talking institutionalized bigotry that tells black folks and low-income Latinos and low-income whites, you work hard, you play by the rules, you can rise in society. That's the American dream we were all taught.
Right.
You know as well as I do, that's not the real playing field.
Right.
You can work hard your whole life and follow all the rules and get nowhere. And when poor communities are deliberately underfunded, when you see sentencing guidelines designed to make blacks serve more crime, and when you see a $75 billion a year mass incarceration system where you have more black men employed by corporations behind bars and outside of bars, first-time drug offenders get sent into jail, where we, the taxpayer, pay for their 3 square health care, room and board, and a corporation pays them 16 cents an hour to work. That's the child of Jim Crow. The drug war was created, and we know this. Nixon's aides have said they did this to keep blacks down. And on top of it, look at the poor neighborhoods and the public schools they have there versus the white neighborhoods. Poor communities are deliberately underfunded, and we have kept this system in place. It's very, very hard for poor white folks to climb that economic ladder.
Are you 100% sure that that's the problem for black folks? That's why black people are in such a mess.
Oh, listen,
are you
I
100%
think
sure?
what you talk about with out-of-wedlock births and what have you, I think that's the symptom of a greater problem when people have given up hope. People look at what the playing field is. They see in poor communities, that guy's not a doctor, that guy's not a surgeon, that guy's a pimp, that guy's a thief, that's what I've got to do. You don't believe that America can get better. You don't believe your life can get better. You have no hope. There are no businesses opening up.
Who's to blame for that? The pimps and the hoes in the hood.
Well, society in general, but let's go for all the corporations that outsourced American manufacturing jobs.
You're blaming someone else.
Hang on. Whoa, whoa, whoa. We're all responsible for our own actions.
Right.
But society is responsible for people giving up hope.
Amazing. So let me ask, if that's true,
and not just black folks. I'm talking
Right.
low-income people, low-income whites, rural whites. I mean, you know, I've spent a lot of time with people who just don't believe it. And then you have drugs or alcohol that make you feel good. And there's pleasure and there's happiness, right? Drugs and alcohol will give you pleasure.
Right.
They won't give you happiness.
Right.
They won't,
they won't give you peace.
They won't give you peace.
But they will give you happiness.
But
I used to smoke marijuana. Have you ever smoked pot?
Have I ever? Yes, sir.
I felt so happy when I smoked the pot. But I had no
peace. If you have good stuff, yeah.
So,
if you buy from the right guy, I guess.
So let me ask this. If what you just said is true about the situation of black people, why it wasn't like that when I was growing up? When I was growing up, blacks got married.
Yeah.
It was an embarrassment to have children out of wedlock. They worked hard.
I know lots of married black folks, sir. I know lots of married black folks.
They bought land. Mm-hmm. I went to an all-black school. They got a good education. They went to black universities. They came back as professionals. And here's the law. The Jim Crow laws were against them. Mm-hmm. But they did much better under that law than they did now that they have freedom. So if what you said is the cause of the problems in the black community, why didn't we see it more then than we do now? Well, and blacks were not going to jail. I don't know anyone who went to jail or even went to a jail.
Right, but that's pre-drug war. That's pre-drug war.
No, that's pre-family destruction and turning their lives over to the Democratic government.
We've always had a Democratic government.
I mean, the Democrats who encouraged them under Lyndon B. Johnson, get the man out of the home, the government would become the daddy.
That's not what Lyndon Johnson said.
The corrupt so-called civil rights leaders like Jackson and others would think for you and do for you.
No one ever said that, sir.
But that's what happened when the civil rights movement happened.
That's
and
not
they
what
started
happened.
Downhill.
Respectfully,
so why
nobody ever said those things.
Why wasn't it better for blacks? I haven't.
See, I'm surprised you would say this because I consider that bearing false witness. No one ever said those things.
I'm a witness to it. I lived through it.
When did Lyndon Johnson say those things?
Back
those aren't
60
quotes.
years ago or so.
Those aren't quotes. You're putting words in the dead man's mouth.
He
Lyndon Johnson
said,
was a racist, but he was also a hero of civil rights.
He didn't say it exactly like that, but when he brought in welfare and said you cannot have a man in the home.
That's not what he said,
yes,
sir.
Yes, he did.
No, sir, he did not say that.
I lived through it. I have family members
Lyndon Johnson
who did
never said you can't have a man in the home,
You
sir.
could not get a welfare check if you were married.
That's not true either.
It is true.
We know there are so many married people who are on welfare and who are on SNAP assistance.
If they were, the government didn't know it.